Previously on All Things Unexplained.
We are addicted to war. We are addicted to we're addicted to stuff. What, we have a 20-year war in Afghanistan, for God's sakes, didn't we learn from the British and the Russians? We should have learned, but we didn't. For all the praying we say we do as a species to our gods and goddesses, okay, do we really give it lip service? Do we really? The thing to remember, this is how I got to say this. If I'm sitting there and I'm getting ready to stab you, if I've done any amount of concentration, any amount of understanding, and any amount of touching the universe and being alone with my thoughts, and if I'm enlightened, I realize that I'm shooting myself. Because that person looking back at me is me too, because we are all one consciousness. Okay, and that's what a lot of people don't get. And with the ETs, we are one consciousness with them as well, and that's what a lot of people don't get.
All Things Unexplained, hosted by Dr. Mounts.
Let's face it, we were always ready to roll without him anyway.
CJ Derringer.
Ain't nobody perfect, right?
And Smitty Neebs.
I've never planned out hardly anything my whole life. I just freeball.
Featuring Cajun Man.
I'm just old nobody, somebody looking for somebody.
Many people need to spend a lot more time with their thoughts, that's for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
We're speaking with Cheryl Costa, author of some incredible books such as Magical Musings of a Rogue Witch, available on Amazon, a UFO Beat, full of terrific UFO encounter articles, many of which, by the way, Cheryl, we don't have time to get into this. There it is, the UFO Beat. Hopefully we can have you back sometime. We can touch on some of these, such as you had one article in there about Gravity Hill or Spook Hill, and it just
there's 80 of these gravity hills around the world.
It just so happened, it was only, I don't know, weeks ago that I was telling CJ and some other friends about a gravity hill that me and my brother and some friends and I in college, we set out to get to in Mississippi, to go and you park at the bottom, put your car in neutral, roll right up to the top of the hill. Right up to the top. But I actually loved that article, and this goes back to the statistics part of it. It makes you see the truth. So I would have said this is a hot spot for UFO activity, as other gravity hills were, but I would have been wrong. And I learned that from your book, The UFO Beat, in that article. And I loved how you had some scientific speculation in there that a lot of people think UFOs travel on or use gravity waves in some form of travel, and just the fact that we have some sort of gravitational disruption in these locations means we get less UFO activity here. And I thought, but you know what? My mind was blown when I read that.
I wrote that article, it fried me. It really did. And I pulled up the numbers that I had at the time. Now, Yates County isn't as bad as I said it was. It's bad for UFO sightings. It's not a hot spot. But I was working only with MUFON numbers at the time. And MUFON, in the database, MUFON's about 40% of the database. National UFO Reporting Center is about 60%. And pretty consistently. And Yates County is not exactly a hot spot, and a lot of these other the 80 other ones that are around the planet, I don't think they are either. So
right, and you only get that knowledge by looking at it through a scientific lens, and I just thought that was great. And you can pick up the UFO Beat on Amazon as well. I had a closing segment I was hoping to do with you, Cheryl.
Sure.
where I could get your hot takes on just a few things, a few hot button topics. So a hot take. I don't know if you ever
Okay,
done
short
those
answers
before.
on my
short
side.
answer, that's
Okay.
right. But the rules don't apply here. Let's face it. But CJ, before we get into a few hot takes, do you have anything else you want to?
Yeah, I just had one other thing that really stuck out to me while I was reading the UFO beat. And there was a section where I can't remember if it was you or somebody else's quote that somebody was talking about flying saucers. And they said, well, that's your granddad's UFO. That, these flying saucers used to be, this big saucer, right? And now we're seeing more of these pyramid shapes and triangle shapes. And do you think that technology has changed in terms of what these UFOs are? Do you think that we are seeing, the UFOs of days past? Are they from the same place as the UFOs of today? What do you think explains the change in the shape of UFOs over time?
First thing, discs are still a very popular shape that people see. Okay, disc shape. Okay, and it's still a very high number. Back in the summer when they showed that one of those Jeffrey Corbell videos of the infrared thing, showed a sphere UFO sailing around very slowly around the ship, USS Omaha. I got a phone call from a journalist on the West Coast. He says, are sphere UFOs a thing? And I said, yeah, it's the number 3 silhouette of all the UFOs. He says, well, how many of them? I said, 17,113. And the guy dropped the phone. He had to pick it back up and apologize. It shocked him so much he dropped the phone. There's Linda will tell you the shapes are about different technologies and different cultures. Okay, we all have cars, but there's a big difference between a Ford sitting out here and a Maserati from Italy. Okay, and for a long time there was a big difference between American cars and Japanese cars, that type of thing. And so
that's a good point.
different cultures, different approach to the transportation and the technology. Different people have different ways of manipulating the sauce of the universe, so to speak, to get here. So that's pretty much it. Next question.
Okay. Thank you. I like that, by the way. I really like that answer.
That was a great answer. Great point. So I have to say real quick before we get into our hot takes that Cheryl, I was born on Halloween. I love Halloween. I think maybe there's a lot of extra paranormal activity or UFO sightings on Halloween because so many people are out, right? They're outside trick-or-treating, whatever, looking up. But you had a whole section in the UFO beat about sightings on Halloween, which I loved, and Christmas, by the way. But
Christmas sightings are amazing,
Well, that makes me wonder, is this people looking for Santa? Is Santa an alien, perhaps?
Well, okay. I had my second sighting was on Christmas Eve, 1971 in Cam Bay, Vietnam.
Wow.
We saw this thing streaking across the sky. A friend of mine and I were walking down to a chapel. Neither one of us were practicing Catholics anymore. We were both 19 or something like that. And but we decided, hey, for tradition, let's go to midnight mass, right? And we're walking down. The runway lights had been shut off because there was no traffic at night. It was Christmas Eve, for God's sakes, And we saw this thing streaking across the sky, and then it stops. And I looked at Tom and I said, Tom, jets don't stop. And he said, yeah, and helicopters don't fly that fast. And I said, with all the reading I've been doing, if that's what I think it is, it's going to start dancing around like a fairy. It's a gone, and neither one of us had our mind at midnight mass when we got there. It was great. Yeah, but it rattled me and it stayed with me. I didn't tell anybody that until about 15 years ago. I didn't share that story until about 15 years ago because I was 19 years old. It rattled me really bad, and I was afraid stigma. I was afraid to tell anybody.
Oh, sure.
So,
well, speaking of the Halloween encounters in your book, The UFO Beat on Amazon, I'm going to tie it in. I got to say this too. CJ told you about her friend.
Happy birthday on Halloween, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I have two birthdays, and one of them is Halloween.
Amazing. And interestingly, my nephew's birthday is on Christmas, so we he got extra presents, and we both always said, hey, they made a holiday after us, so we loved it.
Well, in my case, my real my birthing birthday was in April, okay? But when I had my gender change surgery, it was on Halloween morning, 1989.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so that was my other birthday, so to speak. And by the way, in this household, it's celebrated, and I get a little cake to go with it, so.
There you
I,
go.
I say go ahead and celebrate both of them. You need more celebrations. So
I actually get more email and memes for that date than I do for my regular birthday.
there you go.
So, okay, other questions.
Oh yeah, just before we get into the hot take, so this also blew my mind. CJ's friend, who she told you came on her show, who encountered, and by the way, just a straightforward lady, professional, educated woman, right? Hesitant to tell her story, but yet she encountered a giant circular UFO in, was it Queens or Brooklyn? Queens. Just mind-blowing, right? The only thing she could compare it to was it looked like the massive mothership in Independence Day over the White House, in the movie. But then I'm reading the UFO Beat by our guest Cheryl Costa, and right there out of nowhere, it just jumps out at me. Halloween 2003. I do not recall the location, though I assume somewhere in the New York area, roughly. A witness sees a silent UFO. Now, and by the way, that's one thing CJ's friend said. It's completely silent, which is a paradox, right? Gigantic things are not supposed to be completely silent. But this witness, Halloween 2003, New York area, a football field sized UFO, completely silent. And
So
just so
she
you know,
was
Cheryl,
2002.
yes, 2002. And I have tried hard. MUFON helped me on this, and I've tried hard to find any other encounters of what you would call gigantic UFOs.
Okay,
in that
I
area.
can give you one.
No
I can
luck.
give you one, and I don't know if I wrote about it. My triangle, the one I saw, was I wrote 2 stories about triangles, and I think one of them was mine. I was still working for the other newspaper doing the late night stuff with producing the paper, okay? And I got home about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I parked the car in the garage, and I used to come outside in the driveway, and if it was a clear night, if I look north, there was the Big Dipper and gazillion stars, as they say, and I used to sit there and kind of do what I call what we call in the Buddhist trade a standing meditation, where you stand there for about 5 minutes with your thoughts, just like let the day go. Okay. And I was sitting there doing this, and I started hearing this, it was a humming sound, but it had kind of a rumbling beat to it. And I glanced up above me, because it seemed to be above me, and I looked above it, and this stars were blotting out. Okay. And the triangle, when it got past me, it had to have been close to 2 football fields long. Okay. And it looks like your classic triangle UFO that, like David Marler, the triangle expert, has got models of, three light ball type things, a red light on the bottom, that kind of thing. And it seemed to be moving like a casual, it felt like the thing was flying at 40 miles an hour, just leisurely leaning off to the northwest, and this is before I was writing a column, and I went inside, wrote it in my journal, sketched it, but I was afraid to tell anybody. This is a year before I started writing a column. Okay. And I was afraid to tell anybody. And it was about a year later, when I was writing my column, I ran across a story from the same date and time in Syracuse. Syracuse has a bunch of hills, sort of like Rome. Okay. And over on the other side of town, coming out at 3:30 in the morning, was when I got home. 3:30 in the morning was this nurse coming off shift at Krause Hospital, and she comes out and she could look across town and could see where I'm on the opposite hill, and she saw this thing going by,
Wow.
and she reported it. Okay, so when I saw that almost 8 months later, when I was going through the reports trying to find things to write about, I'm going, wow, oh my God, and I went in my journal and there it was, so there was another kid up in a place called Herkimer, New York. It's up in what they call the Leather Stocking region along the New York State Thruway, and he was in high school. This is in the 70s. And he used, when you're a farm kid and in the middle of the winter, you get on a snowmobile, you want to go over to Ralph's house and work on the history assignment we got. Okay, they would jump on the snowmobile and drive over there, right? Because the fields aren't growing anything, it's just full of snow, right? And he's coming back from his friend's house, gazillion stars in the sky, as they say. And suddenly his snowmobile started running rough in the middle of one of the big fields they had. We're talking 100-acre fields. It started running rough and quit. And when it quit, that's when he heard this pulsing humming sound going over. And it started blotting out the stars. And funny thing is, when he realized what it was, when it got over these large electrical grid, like interstate electrical grids, it flew over them, probably only maybe 50 or 100 feet above the grid. The electricity was arcing up to it.
Oh my. Okay.
And so it was a real interesting view, to read this and going, oh my goodness, So a lot of people have seen these really big triangles. And I have people used to email me after I read triangle. Oh, Cheryl, pat me on the head. You stupid girl. Don't you know that's a TR3B? I said, if we built a TR3B and the TR3B is 2 football fields long, as a taxpayer, I want to know more about it.
Right. For sure. Amazing.
Those are great stories.
That's
in that
else.
book, there's a story about a lady about the Greyhound bus in the field. That's a cute one. It was set in the 1930s. This girl was about 8 years old. It was on Thanksgiving, and they were coming back from a grandparents in a city pretty close to where I was publishing the paper, and they were going. The roads were all these secondary 2-lane roads, right? And they're going up and down. There was no such thing as an interstate in those days. And they went up over this one hill, and she screamed at her father and mother, "Stop the car, there's a Greyhound bus down there in the cow field." Her father worked for IBM, and they got out, and she got out. She was in like her Sunday best, and they got out and looked, and down there, and she described it. We had an artist sketch the thing. It looked like kind of like a Greyhound bus. It was gray, and it sort of looked like the UFO you see on the front cover of our UFO book. Okay, sort of looked like that, and rows of windows. And they saw some little guys running around the thing, and then as they walked a little further into the field, and she was stepping. She told me later. This lady was in her 80s or early 90s. She told me she was stepping in cow patties and everything.
Right.
And what happened was the little guys got inside the thing, and the thing took off straight up, and was like gone in like a flash. Now we hear these stories in the last few years about these UFOs that drop from 80,000 feet to almost sea level and like that. Okay. Right. So, when I heard those kinds of stories, this sounds like these guys too, so. Oh yeah. But there's some very, very unique stories about this stuff. I wrote a lot of good ones up in there, and I'd be happy if people read them. The UFO Beat.
Oh yeah. Highly recommend.
New York State was my UFO Beat, and it was some of the most fun 7 years I had writing about these things.
Well, I know I sure enjoyed reading them. So, who's ready to do some hot takes?
Me.
All right, here we go. Let's do some hot takes. CJ, you're definitely welcome to chime in. And we got a little hot take music here. All right, here we go, Cheryl. Hot take number 1, Roswell, the Roswell incident.
I didn't take it seriously for years. I really didn't. And then I didn't take it seriously until I started reading Stanton Friedman's analysis of it when he came out with it. Even then, I really didn't take it super serious. And then there was something, in fact, I think I wrote about it. There was something that happened to me when I finally, I know what it was. I was writing an article about 1940, about the UFO wave of 1947. Well, most people, they think about Roswell as one incident, but from middle of June to about the middle or end of July, we had over 950 reported sightings in the United States from 38 states. Most people don't know that. We only hear about Roswell.
Sure.
Okay. And it was when I was writing that, I called Stanton Friedman up and I said, "Hey, Stanton, did anybody ever take the approach that maybe, this was a starship, Roswell was a starship down, and all the rest of the sightings we saw was like the Galactic Federation coming down here, like the Civil Air Patrol looking for them?" He said, "Yeah." And he pointed me at something to read. And if you Google out on the internet, the 1947 UFO wave, you can probably find a PDF that you can download, which was written by a guy in NICAP in the mid 1960s that analyzes. This guy was an actor, a real professional equity actor, and he was in touring companies. So he worked at night, but he had his daytime available. So every day, every little town he went to for a couple 3-night stay for the show or whatever they did, he would go to the library, crawl through their morgue for 2 months worth of newspapers, June and July 1947. And if there was any local sightings that were reported in the paper, he logged it in his book. Okay. And he went to all these different places, and he had probably, I think, somewhere upwards of 25 or 30 newspapers that he mined information from.
Right.
Okay. So, and of course, at the same time, these things were happening. The New York Times is going, "Oh, yeah, silly stuff. Those people, astronomers can't find them. There's no such thing. No, by the way, people are telling us they're coming in different shapes and colors. Ah!" And they do come in different over 100 different shapes and in different colors, so there's an article in there that I wrote in that context. Go ahead. Next question.
Amazing. And I think you're totally right. No way that was a singular incident. Very interesting that we saw the rise of the CIA, Air Force, lots of different entities right after Roswell. So, by the way, I have a listener question real quick for you, Cheryl. George Winters wants to know, so alien technology could be confused as God or goddess-like ability. As someone more in tune with these things, how can anyone truly know the difference?
Okay. I was a senior electronic warfare specialist in the Navy. And the joke we used to talk about is we look at signals on frequencies, everything from DC to light. Okay. And that was our kind of a joke we had to identify ourselves with. And when you start getting up in the microwave technology, it was PFM. It was pure effing magic. Okay, how some of this stuff worked. Okay, and if you breathed on it wrong, it didn't work. Okay, so when they say talking about their technology looking, what was it Arthur C. Clarke said? Sufficiently advanced technology is going to look like pure magic. And when I do heavy magical workings over a period of time, I've had students say, "Wow, that really was a physics experiment, wasn't it?" So,
Right.
So yeah, it does look like magic.
Good answer. So next hot take, infamous Area 51 whistleblower Bob Lazar.
I love Bob.
Love him.
And I like that thing that Jeremy Corbell did about 2-3 years ago. He did a documentary with him, and there was some kind of mention about something with Bob Lazar in the town where the guy lives. Suddenly, there's more federal agents there than there is the population.
Yes.
Somebody believed it.
Yes.
So yeah, I've always taken Bob. Initially, I took Bob at a grain of salt, but working in the defense industry, from the outset, I believe the guy. I worked in the defense industry, and we worked on some pretty snaky stuff in the defense industry.
Everything about Bob Lazar comes off as just totally believable. Everything. And it is interesting, right? Show how, okay, the CIA, they want you to, FBI, they want you to believe this guy's full of crap, right? He's just making all this up. Oh, wait a minute. They're raiding his house. Why,
Thank you. Yes.
He's full of crap.
Yes.
Why is he getting video of you on his cell phone raiding his house? So it doesn't make any sense, right? Good answer. Next hot take. The recent military videos are pilots capturing the UAPs on video.
It's fantastic footage. We should have gotten more revealed than we did. Okay. We really should have started a real serious dialogue with the American people. Okay, we really should have. Okay.
It was bad timing.
It was very bad timing. And had COVID not come along when it did, we might have already had serious congressional hearings. Something I did last summer, about the time all the Jeremy Corbell stuff was out there, I took a copy of the Pink Book. I put two copies on my couch. And then the Senate Select Committee at that time was headed up by Senator Rubio. Okay. And I took the Florida data and I dumped it by county, zip code, and shape for 20 years, 2001 through 2020, across the top of the page. It was about 150 pages deep. Okay. And we drilled it, put it in a 3-ring book, did the same thing for a New York State representative on the House Select Committee on Intel, and put a cover letter with it, showed it to Linda when she came home. I thought she was going to tell me not to mail it, but she looked at it and says, I don't like the cover letters. She wrote a much more terse cover letter with a little executive summary, and basically it was only about 2/3 of a page. And the bottom part of it says, we are the civilian experts on UFO sightings in the United States. If you have congressional hearings, call us. And we shipped them out. Now, 2 5-pound packages. Okay. And the postmaster in this little dinky burg about 15 minutes outside of Syracuse, in these little hometown Mayberry RFD post offices. There's like 3 people in the back and the postmaster. Okay. And every time I send a book out to a radio station or a newspaper or something like that, she's sending it out book rate for me and everything. Oh, who are you sending it to? Oh, CBS News. Oh, cool. So we're doing it. And when I send it to Rubio and this other guy's office, I can't remember the guy in the house, unfamiliar name. And when I sent it, they says, oh my, you're sending it to Congress. And I said, yeah. I said, so if I don't show up for a long time, they probably come and put me in cuffs or something. About 3 weeks later, I look out the window from my apartment complex, and there are 6 police cars parked behind my Nissan Rogue.
Hello.
And they're from 3 different constabularies. And I'm going, oh my God, what did I do?
I've done it now.
Yeah, that was my first thought. I was going, oh crap. They did not take a joke down to Congress. That's my first thought. This is like 3-4 weeks later. Turned out there was our apartment complex at the time was a 55+ apartment complex, and we had a lot of old ladies who had nothing better to do than say, hey, it's a dead-end cul-de-sac where our apartment complex, those guys are doing a drug deal down there. Called the cops, and they said, hey, there's a drug deal going on down here in our parking lot, and we're old ladies, we shouldn't have this happening. Send more than 1 car. And they sent like 6 cars. New York State Police, county sheriffs, city police, that type of thing. And the border patrol guy showed up. Okay. So boom, all the cops in the world were down here parked behind my car. And it wasn't me, it was the drug deal that was going down.
Well, it is terrific that we do have a lot of senators and other government officials finally getting on board with UFO disclosure. And a matter of fact, on the show, we bid a fond farewell to Harry Reid earlier in the year, who passed away. So
yeah,
it's a good thing that so many officials are getting on board now. So next
A quick story with Lou Alessandro. 2017,
yeah.
I'm at the Cherry Hill, New Jersey MUFON conference. Okay, I had a computer and a printer with me, and if you told us what city and county you were from, we would give you a printout for your county, free.
Wow.
Okay, and Lou was talking to me. He had a cup of coffee Saturday morning, and I had a cup of coffee. We're standing there, and we're talking, and I said, "Would you like to see something funny?" He says, "What's that?" I says, right now everybody's saying the UFOs are, the sightings are tanking. And he says, "Yeah, they really are." And he says, "Well, maybe people keep saying, why are they tanking?" I said, "There's a new bunch of kids in town, and they've shown up." He said, "What do you mean?" And I printed out this one particular shape, and there were two other shapes with it. They had the exactly same sighting patterns, except in a higher frequency of them. Okay. So when the Saturn-shaped UFO, that's those half-mile wide ones, like the 1986 Japan Airlines guy experienced, right?
Yes.
When they show up, teardrop and egg-shaped UFOs show up. So think of them as like utility craft. You wouldn't bring the aircraft carrier into the dock. You'd leave it out in the bay and let the helicopters do all the traffic. Well, this is what this seemed to be. Right. And I showed it to him where all the other stuff was tanking. And here were these three shapes going up rather steeply. Okay.
Right.
And those Saturn shaped ships only show up about 20 to 40 times a year, tops. Okay. They're rare. Okay. But when they do show up, these other two shapes in higher frequency show up as well. And he looked at the printout, says, he's always got a stoic face, and he looked troubled along with that stoic face, right? And he says, "Can I have this?" I said, "Sure." He folds it up, puts it in his lapel pocket. Last I heard of it. But
Oh yeah, that's incredible.
numbers can rattle people.
And that Japanese sighting encounter, that is an amazing story. I'm pretty sure that was over Alaska, and they picked that up on radar, a gigantic unidentified craft following the airplane.
A 747 freighter.
And you can listen to the cockpit tapes, with communication on the ground. It's an amazing sighting.
That ship had more agility than the 747.
Yes.
That's what creeped out the aviation people. That thing moved with an amazing agility. So
scary.
That's one of my favorite stories too. Especially once I figured out the data. Back in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, they were only maybe 20 or 30 sightings a year. In the 2017, 2018 timeframe, they shot up to over 150 a year sightings of the Saturn-shaped ships. When everything else had, since 2013, the sighting reports on a yearly basis were falling by 30% a year. They really tanked, and they bottomed out around 2017. And and then these guys were the new kids in town. And when their numbers started falling off again, all the other numbers started coming back. So who were these guys? The Klingons?
Oh yeah.
Who knows?
And what truths must be in those numbers, right? In those facts. It's something else. So I got an interesting hot take for you here, Cheryl. The Salem witch trials.
Miscarriage of judgment by a bunch of hysterical people, and they weren't witches. They were accused of it, but they weren't witches.
Yeah, I've been to Salem. I've toured the memorial. It's actually a really horrifically sad thing to tour.
Well, to go along with that, you got a guy down in Tennessee, having book burnings and burning all the Harry Potter books and burning all the Twilight books. Oh, they're witchcraft. And I stood up on my radio program, held up my book, Magical Musings, and said, Harry Potter and Twilight is not real witchcraft. This is real witchcraft, So, the bottom line is he's generating hysteria and hate, and it does not seem to be the path of the fisherman.
Right.
Of the carpenter.
That actually brings me to my final hot take of the evening. You actually segued right into it because my son is now really into this. He's only 7, and he's reading voraciously through everything he can get his hands on. But your hot
Yep.
take on Harry Potter?
Oh, it's fun. It's from a magical standpoint. It's a bit too. It's what I call fantasy potions and waving wands. And although I do like the first time we see Snape, no, there will be no fancy wand waving or spell incantations in this room. We're
Yeah.
going to do some real science, and we're going to pour things in bottles and mix things. He was the quintessential magical chemistry teacher, and I really like Snape a lot from that standpoint. But as far as it's fantasy magic, okay, but it does show Rowling did a good job of showing us an alternate culture that can be living right among us and we don't know it.
Sure.
Okay, but that's all I can say about Harry Potter. I like Harry Potter. I've written a LARP game in that kind of a universe, so to
Right.
speak. And as a former trans activist, I have to say I'm very annoyed with J.K. Rowling's take on things. But she's using a misnomer, and I'm going to make this very clear. Okay. She frequently says a trans person can't be female. I know I'm not female. I have male DNA. Okay, I can't be a female. I can be a woman, but I can't be a female. Okay, a woman is a gender social construct versus normally associated with a certain biology. Okay, and that's the argument. That's the difference here, and that's where I would go head to head with J.K. Rowling if I had her over for tea.
And you should have
Hey,
her over for tea.
Hey, this household, we have tea at 4:00. It is a nice herbal tea, usually any number of different herbal teas, and we have little ginger biscuits with them. We celebrate tea in this household.
And before
God
we get
save the queen.
Oh yeah. And before we get going, Cheryl, can you tell our listeners where can they go to pick up your books, and do you have any sneak previews of upcoming projects for them?
The first thing, if you go to Amazon and you go to the book search and you put in Cheryl with a C, Costa with a C, okay? If you put in Cheryl with a C, Costa with a C, and if you write UFO, you'll get our UFO books. Will come right up in front of you. The two desk references and the UFO beat, okay? If you proceed to move around a little bit in the book area that's associated with Cheryl Costa, you will find some plays. You will find a book of my short stories, Charmaine's Tales, fantastic, interesting, and disturbing short stories. Okay, I strongly recommend it. If you like the Twilight Zone, you'll love Charmaine's Tales.
Love the Twilight Zone.
It's some pretty cool stuff, and I put a little conspiracy theory in my fiction, so I think you'll like it. I'm getting ready to put another one out. So, okay. Now the other thing is that's where the UFO books are. Here's what's coming, and what we're working on presently. If we were to try and print out all of our data down to the municipal or zip code level, it would be 1.5 feet thick.
Wow.
Okay, 2 or 3 Oxford dictionaries. Okay. We can't do that. We can't sell a book like that. So what we've decided to do, and people think we're nuts to do it, but remember, we're former project managers and we know how to design good process and everything. We've come up with a process, a rapid production process, and we have cleaned up our database to the point where we can generate the kind of reports we want to do. We are getting ready to generate one book with all the kind of stuff you see in the desk reference, but drilled down quite literally to the zip code level in every single state. So there'll be 50 individual state books. We can probably put them all out over this year. Got a written process right here that we're checking off all I don't know if you can see it here. Move over a little bit. You can see the
Wow.
different processes we're having to check off on every single state. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing for all 29 of the definable shapes between the two databases. There's
Oh my
about
goodness.
33 shapes, but the problem is that 3 of them are unknown, anomalous, and something else. But it's not ambiguous. But all the things that actually have a shape, a circle, a square, a triangle, whatever, we're going to do an individual book on every one of them, and we're going to drill down. We're going to show you maps of where they are done by zip code. Okay, and we can quite literally drill down. And there are states that have a lot of sightings are not necessarily totally blanketed by zip code. It's like a checkerboard. It's amazing. Okay, and people ask us, why don't you do it by the cities? It would be just a lot of little dots, and most of them would go around a major metropolitan area. If you do the zip codes, you get the suburbs, the bedroom communities, the non-incorporated communities, and the rural areas within a certain regional area based on zip code. And if it's good enough for Congress and senators to monitor their constituency, it's good enough to monitor UFOs. Counties were too big. Counties were too big for this. So by doing by zip code, we got a different level of resolution, and we're seeing some amazing things by doing it by zip code. So so it's going to be about, with an analysis book and the reference book, it's going to be about 80 books altogether by the time we're done with this thing. And the idea is that it's literally going to be the largest published compilation of UFO statistics ever published in human history.
Incredible.
Think about that a minute.
That is legendary.
Okay. And that's when Linda and I are going to say in front of some academic committee, we'll take our PhDs now.
And they would be well deserved. You must
if
have
you can get
We'll
them,
give you an
if they'll
honorary
let this in.
PhD.
Yes.
Even that would
You
still
must
be
have some
wonderful
killer
but
Excel
but we can't-
spreadsheets. I can't even imagine.
wait till you see. I generated one for Dave Marler today. It's going to be 220 pages, and it's printed horizontally. Okay,
Jeez.
and basically I did 20 years across the top and 220 pages of all the zip codes where triangles alone have been seen.
Wow.
So you're already getting an idea how big that triangle book's going to be. Okay, and we're going to print the maps in there. We have the ability to take those zip codes and print them into a map. Okay, and so it's going to be very impressive stuff. Problem is we can't put them out individually. We have to literally build them all together, because we found out that the thing that limits how fast you can put them out, we can generate all the charts, maps, all that stuff. We've got automation we've designed to do this. The thing that limits you is that cover. You only have a 10-page tolerance, so you have to know the page counts before you can get a template to make the cover.
Right.
Okay. And that's the limiting factor. So what we plan to do is basically generate all this stuff, have it all in PDF form. We know exactly how many pages the whole works is, front matter, ending matter, all the charts and graphs and tables inside, any verbiage we're going to put in there. We're going to know exactly how big each and every book is before we generate the covers, because in some cases, some of the smaller states 10 or 12 smaller states may all have the same book size cover.
Right.
Okay, so we only have to build those books together because we just have a template for that page and just put a different state name on the front of each one. So we're going to drive the Amazon people crazy when we start uploading this whole series.
Yes, you will.
Blow their socks off.
Book construction is
Well, I'm
so tedious
certainly
and so
looking forward.
frustrating. That's exciting.
I'm
though.
looking forward to
A
seeing
lot of people think we're crazy, but we're both retired now. And I don't know if you can see the inside of the apartment. Okay, I can't, not with the camera the way it is. But what we're doing, when we moved into this place, we decided not to make the living room the living room. We made the TV room back there in the sewing room. We made that in the master bedroom. We put our bedroom in the small kids' bedroom. And we took the whole front area is our offices right here. I've got 2 large wire racks on my side, Linda's on the other side of it. Okay, there's our office space. And this whole area that would normally be living room and dining room, it's a war room. We've got a couple of large 6-foot, 8-foot tables strapped together with bungee cords. And this is our publishing war room. And this is how we're going to do this. So we made some sacrifices not to have a traditional living room. Yeah, it's going to be cool stuff. And
I think you're both going down as legendary figures in ufology, and I hope
absolutely you are, and we are so honored to have had you on our show. I mean, I don't know how we got so lucky to have you, and we told you we wouldn't do it, but we just took 2 hours of your time.
Well, it's okay. We're on a roll. Last point I'm going to tell you. In November, while I was packing, State University in New York at Albany has taken my papers. They had to send a freight truck down to take 25 bankers boxes with them. And their first analysis was, I got a thing back from the archivist, sent back a very simple letter telling me what they found. And they said, she finished the letter with saying, "You are the most unique individual I've ever analyzed." So, and I'm still sending, compliment. I'm still sending them stuff. Give you an example. When I sent them a copy of the Pink Book, I sent them the draft printout, which was this thick, and it's like 3 times as much. It's all done in individual sheets of paper and things. So they're getting the original drafts of everything we're publishing, and as well as a copy of the real thing. So as the director of their archive said to me, "Cheryl, somebody 50 years from now is going to get a master's or a PhD based on what you 2 women have done."
Yes.
Now, it's not totally UFO. Remember, I'm one of the 11 people who coined the term transgender back in the early 80s.
Really?
There in the mid 80s, a handful of us got outed. We were on this board of the International Foundation for Gender Education. It's now defunct, but back then it was very operational. And what there's about 5 of us that were outed nationally. And to keep my clearance, I had to be out. Okay, I had to be in a position where I couldn't be blackmailed. So I got outed in one of the tabloids, and we figured, okay, the cat's out of the bag, might as well run with it. So what we did was, when we were going on shows like Donahue and things like this, and you know all the major talk shows from that era, okay,
Yes.
Gary Collins, all this stuff. I did all those, and all the people were talking, that kind of thing. The deal was, how do I want to say this? We kept people ask us these terms, and say, well, cross-dresser, transsexual, and they were medical terms taken out of the DSM-3. We said, you got to stop using clinical terms. And there was a medical doctor on our board, a trans woman, and she said, why don't we use a word like transgender, like an umbrella term? So we all concurred on that idea. So as the 5 or 6 of us that were out doing the talk show circuit and what I'm going to call the editorial circuit, magazines, that type of thing, newspapers, as we were out there talking about this topic matter, our usage of the term transgender got filtered into the lexicon, so to speak. Took 10 years of effort like this. In fact, when they were going to try and take my security clearance away from me, the government was going to try and take it away from me at Lockheed. The guy said, well, I think you can be blackmailed. And I looked at him and I said, will you be back in a couple of weeks? He said, yeah. I said, tell you what, hold off turning off my clearance for 3 weeks. I think I can fix this. He said, I doubt it, but I'll see you in 3 weeks. And I'll show off your clearance then. So when he came back, remember, I was in transition at the time. So I was still going to work kind of quasi boy, but I had permed hair and thinning eyebrows and 3 earrings, that kind of thing. And so it was just before my high maintenance days, as they say. And then, so what happened is I walked into him and I says, I don't think you can take my clearance away. He says, why? I threw a VHS tape on the desk. He said, I'm the blonde on Phil Donahue. I'm the redhead on Gary Collins. And he said, he said, you came out on national television? I said, yeah. And his jaw went down to his belly button. And I said, yeah, I did. You can't blackmail me. And, oh, by the way, you were worried about the guys here at work and their families knowing about me. Well, I made copies of all this and I've given it to everybody in my department, and they took them home and watched them with their wives. And so I got a letter 3 weeks later saying, we thought that was bad judgment. So we're going to send you to see a Department of Defense certified shrink. So they did.
Oh, goodness.
I get down there. This guy and I talked for about 25 minutes, and he looks at me and says, Cheryl, you're saner than the people who sent you here. So they ran me through a full set of psychologicals. Remember, I had already had a full set of psychologicals at Hopkins about a year or two before. So, and what did we come back with? 2 sets of psychologicals, one paid for by the Defense Department, one paid for by Lockheed, and both of them said a perfectly healthy woman took this test. So,
And a genius.
That helped. Well, that too, But the bottom line was they adjudicated my clearance. They said, okay, fine, you can keep your clearance. You can't be blackmailed. You were out about this stuff, and they say you're sane. Okay, you're good. That's it, my friends.
Oh, it's been so great chatting with you.
Let's do this another time.
Let's do it. We would love
Once
to have
all
you back.
the next stuff comes out.
It's probably going to take us about 8 months to a year to do. I mean, we're not working with any new data. We're still the 2001 to 2020. So it's a matter of, I've generated, in the last 3 days, I've generated Alabama, Alaska, and Nevada. So, I'm knocking out about 1 state a day. California and the top 10 states will probably take me 2 or 3 days for each state because they're so big. And the reports are easy to generate. The computer does all the heavy lifting there. It's going in and formatting the headers on the pages.
Right.
That is the time consuming part. It's tedious work. So you put on a pot of decaf coffee and you keep going.
Well, we'll have you back on next year then when that comes out. We'll have lots more to
Sometime
discuss.
either late this year or early next year, we'll have this. We'll make sure you know about it.
Great.
We're friended. Dr. Mounts and I are friended, so we'll make sure I let you know what's going on and how we're progressing with it. But that's where we're going, and that's what we intend to do. And unless we two of us drop dead, we're going to produce these things. But then we're going to run off into the sunset and do things we like to do. Okay. I'm going to start LARPing again, and Linda's going to start sewing for the Western Reserve Historical Society. So,
Well deserved too. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been a real
This
pleasure.
has been fun. This has been
It
fun.
has been.
Thanks. It's been great. Everybody, have a good night. Stay unexplained. CJ, been great coming back on with you.
Yeah.
The amazing Cheryl Costa, thank you so much. Stay unexplained, everybody. Good night.
You've been listening to All Things Unexplained. If you liked this podcast, please do give us a 5-star rating and leave us a review. If you would like to hear more All Things Unexplained, be sure to follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Our show depends on the support of listeners like you. Find us on Venmo under the business accounts. Just look for @Bigfoot UFO. If you can't get enough of us, go ahead and check us out at allthings-unexplained.com. A special thanks to our producer, director, sound mixer, editor, and the man who wears far too many hats. No, seriously, he wears a lot of hats, Dr. Tim Mounts. Without you, we couldn't keep the lights on. Thanks for listening to All Things Unexplained.